All right, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be checking out some research specifically on nicotine and the therapeutic effects or possible therapeutic effects of nicotine, looking at a meta study. But first, I wanted to just talk about the whole theory of smoking from, I guess, an anthropological viewpoint and the use of other substances too, because it really does call into question some things about the ancient world and how people figured out how to do certain things without modern technology and stuff like that. Now, of course, a lot of people will dispute stoned ape theory, but it does seem to be clear that people did use all types of substances back in the day, back in caveman times and stuff like that. They've done tests on pottery and pipes and stuff like that, and there's evidence. It's kind of hard to deny that people have been drinking beer since at least the Egyptians and smoking all types of other stuff. Now, the main theory as to why people smoke in the first place seems to come from the fact that we're the only animal that tamed fire. And so sitting around a campfire in a cave with a fire going, humans had to adapt to be able to inhale smoke in order to be around fire, since we're the only animal that can be around fire. And of course, when you put stuff on fire, it burns, and you put different herbs and grasses and plants and stuff on the fire, and you get different effects when you inhale the smoke. So that's the main theory as to why people smoke or why people can smoke. Now, why people smoke what they do smoke seems to be coming apparently clear with science that there are medicinal properties to the drugs that we've carried forward through time. And at the time, caveman times, they were probably the most effective delivery methods. Like, for example, if you take smoking compared to chewing tobacco carries a lot of the same risks that smoking does, and it's clearly a much more unpleasant way to deliver nicotine to your body. Right. Now, what I got up here, what is an MAO inhibitor or MAOI or a monoamine oxidase inhibitor? Basically is this type of substance or chemical that's used in SSRIs a lot, serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And in and of itself, it's an antidepressant that breaks down neurotransmitters and increases levels of other neurotransmitters. You'll notice that this is a trend in these like kind of ancient drugs that people have used. It somehow balances out. It stops certain things from doing certain things and increases other things. And saying how so many people are depressed, and this is something that humans have been doing basically since we've existed as a species, to just take that away and then replace it with the like allopathic medical system, which is basically just using the exact same compounds just in a more stripped down and scientifically made way, which is not always the best way to do it, because when you concentrate these, when they're naturally, it's similar to like sugars, right? Like naturally occurring sugars are way better for you than processed sugars. And it's the same kind of concept with this stuff. Like willow bark root is better for you than Tylenol. Now, Tylenol will work faster, but willow bark root won't kill you if you take too much of it. Right? So, saying all that, the question is, how did the Incans figure out what an MAO inhibitor was in order to ingest DMT? Because this is like a very specific compound, right? Like, a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. So you're telling me that the Incan tribe guys, they were like, oh yeah, well, we need to get those MAOIs because otherwise we can't ingest the DMT because it won't break down in our body. How do they figure that out? Right? Because you have to see, look, you have to combine an MAOI with DMT, otherwise you can't orally ingest it. See, the human body has natural defenses against DMT. They are called monoamine oxidase. Their role is to destroy the DMT as soon as it gets inside the body, whether it's released by the pineal gland or whether it is taken from the outside. So the role of MAOI is to keep the MAO from destroying the DMT. It makes it possible to ingest the DMT and have it come to the brain intact. So again, how did the Incans figure this out? Like, this is a very complicated thing, MAOI, right? And it's used in modern medicine all the time, right? Because our body just has the triggers for this, and that's just like you eat food and it gives you certain nutrients. There's other things that we're supposed to ingest, right? And just like food has negative side effects, if you eat too much, you get fat. If you eat the stuff that doesn't have the right nutrients in it, you get sick, right? Like, you can't eat a poison. But there's also things that have negative and positive effects. Until you have to balance them out. Okay, so now we're going to get into the nicotine stuff. First question is there nicotine in tomatoes? Yes, tomatoes do contain nicotine, but only in very small amounts. A medium-sized tomato has about 4.3 nanograms of nicotine per gram. Okay, we got a bunch of other foods that have nicotine in it: cauliflower, tea, spinach, cabbage, eggplant, green peppers, and tomatoes, and potatoes. All have nicotine in them. So you're addicted too, right? So basically, the Simpsons meme is true, of course.
They're after the tobacco!
Now you can't tell me nicotine's not addictive.
Lisa, there's absolutely no evidence.
Tobacco!
Give him the plant, Homer.
No, I'd rather die. Take it!
Well, what a lovely gift. Gotta run.
Now, Mindy, how did you want to pay me the $150 million? Cash will be okay. Or stock? Did your company have stock? Mindy! Mindy and I are just hammering out a payment plan. We'll talk Monday!
Hey, props to Mindy on the grab. Booyah!
Guys, we seem to be carrying a little extra weight.
Don't look at me, I'm on Sugar Busters.
All right. Simpsons memes are always correct. So now let's check out this meta study here. The double-edged nature of nicotine toxicities and therapeutic potentials. Now, this is a meta study, and they tested it on a bunch of different ways, ranging from, cigarette smokers to injecting lab rats with nicotine and introducing it in their food, and also using nicotine patches and gum, I'm assuming, things like that. So they're testing it out on different types of people and lab animals. And this is the kind of results that they're getting, basically, that it's possible, it's a possible cancer, not causing, but it can increase your chances of getting cancer if you are predisposed to getting cancer genetically. It can cause cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease, reproductive disease, and other diseases if you use it too much. But in medicinal doses, it can, reduce your chances of getting myocarditis. Apparently, it's not a cure, but a treatment for getting sepsis and endotoxemia, where you can use it in emergency if you have sepsis or endotoxemia. It helps ulcerative colitis, arthritis, and a bunch of nervous system diseases that we'll get into. So basically, at first, they're talking about the negative effects, which is basically the main things is that it affects certain cells, and they're talking about on a cellular level that it can basically stop apoptosis, which is your cell from dying, which is an interesting effect that, yeah, okay, if you have a bad cell, then it can be bad. But it's kind of interesting that it also causes your cells not to die, right? So, I mean, it can't always be a negative. One other thing that it does cause twitching, can cause twitching. And it, again, if you're predisposed to getting cancer, it can, or if you have cancer, then you definitely shouldn't do nicotine. So you can see here they got a bunch of charts. See how they're talking about the apoptosis. That's like one of the main things that's negative about it, I guess. And then they're saying on top of it, if you're smoking actual smoke, it makes it even worse. And basically, nicotine is broken down in the liver. So that's why you don't want to overdose on it. It seems like that's what they're talking about. It's like if you're doing way too much, like you're smoking like 2 packs a day or something like that. Or like how they used to do the test on smoking where they would put a monkey in like a space helmet and then put like 2 packs of cigarettes in like a pump and pump all the smoke into it. And they'd be like, look, the monkey got real sick. It's like, yeah, you put it in a space helmet and then pumped in 5 packs of cigarettes into the space helmet. So yeah, it can also cause, your arteries and stuff to get messed up. But so can poor eating habits, lack of exercise, and drinking. Yeah, it can cause your arteries to get messed up. It does the same thing. It does like messes up the cells in your lungs. It can mess up the cells in your lungs. But then on top of it, smoking makes it worse. Like the actual smoke makes it worse every time. Obviously, pregnant women shouldn't be doing that. Age-related macular degeneration. Diabetes. So you can look at all that stuff. So now we're going to look at some of the beneficial effects of it. Now, this is one of the most interesting things because people that don't smoke probably wonder why people smoke. They're like, that's just so stupid. It smells horrible and it's dangerous and blah blah blah. But here's like one of the first things, like the main thing, right? Nicotine can extensively improve cognition, which has long attracted the interest of researchers. This section introduces the therapeutic effects of nicotine on Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, schizophrenia, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and major depressive disorder. We got some charts. See, so it goes into a cell and it does stuff to the specific cell, right? So epidemiological studies have shown a significant negative correlation between smoking and what's it called? Alzheimer's disease incident. So in a 4-week transdermal nicotine treatment, that's the patch, patients with Alzheimer's disease, nicotine significantly improved the patient's attention performance. In another study on transgenic mice, nicotine treatment reduced the accumulation of insoluble AB in the cortex and hippocampus, which is associated with this pathway mediated by this other thing. Right? And there appears to be a connection between cell cycle related proteins and neuronal loss. Nicotine regulates the cell. See, that's the thing, right? That keeps coming up. It regulates the cell and apoptic process to reduce neuronal loss by decreasing the mRNA and protein levels of cyclin D1 and CDK4 and the pro-apoptic factors. Right. So see, they're saying it stops apoptosis, but it seems more like it's regulating apoptosis because then here it's increasing the pro-apoptotic factors. Sorry. Okay. See, another study pointed out that nicotine prevents AB-induced neuronal synapse damage through this pathway. In addition, signaling may be crucial in neuroprotection. Signaling pathway can regulate, say, synaptic transmission and plasticity, and increased this expression can improve structure of the dendrites. Activating WNT can promote this expression, and nicotine prevents this induced catein reduction through whatever that is. In addition, nicotine has been shown to improve memory in transgenic mice. Studies have shown a significant negative correlation between Parkinson's disease incidence and smoking, coffee consumption, and drinking alcohol. It's just a correlation, though. Further research showed that nicotine can protect animal models of Parkinson's disease from nigrostriatal damage in rats. Administering nicotine before injury effectively reduced striatal dopamine loss. And in MPTP treated monkeys, chronic oral nicotine decreased dopamine turnover, enhanced synaptic plasticity, and improved substantia nigra function after striatal injury. But this protective effect only occurred before striatal injury. This indicated that nicotine can only exert a protective effect on striatal injury rather than a repairing effect. Nicotine Mediated neuroprotection also involves this, and is subsequently divided into calcium dependent and calcium independent. So as you can see there, right, it does have some effect on protecting you from getting certain diseases. Now, again, going back to the stoned ape theory, we can see how these two effects that nicotine provides in a tribal situation, in a prehistoric situation, would provide people that took this drug with an extreme advantage, right? Because it's increasing your brain plasticity, it's increasing your attention span, your memory, and it increases your visual acuity. It says that somewhere there. I can't find it right now, right? And all of those things are things that you need for hunting, right? You need to be able to concentrate, you need to be able to focus, right? Pay attention, memorize patterns, the animal movement patterns, right? And then the second effect that we're seeing, right, that would also be beneficial to a tribe is that it reduces the chance that the old people are going to go crazy, right? And that's a huge advantage, especially now we have the internet, but in a tribal situation, being able to get the wisdom of the older people in the tribe was always a huge advantage. Like if you had a tribe with a bunch of like 70-year-old dudes in it, and the other tribe, the oldest guy in their tribe was like 30, you guys have like a huge advantage on the wisdom front, right? So we can see how even though it has some negative effects, it has some positive effects too, right? And why people would have carried this forward, and then, discussing the, what do you call it? The delivery system really seems to be what they're talking about here. Because they're even talking about in the paper that because they're doing this on the molecular level, they're like, well, we can make this other drug that counteracts the effects of the like cancer causing or cancer promoting agents, right? And then you only get the positive effects of the nicotine, right? So then smoking is a high risk factor for patients with schizophrenia. However, the biological mechanisms underlying this association remain unclear. Liu et al. Investigated the relationship between alterations in intrinsic brain activity associated with schizophrenia, pathology, and nicotine addiction. Authors found that smoking reversed intrinsic brain activity in the right striatum and prefrontal cortex, consistent with the pharmacological theory of schizophrenia. Furthermore, addictive effects are independent of the disease. Found that the dopamine D2 receptor antagonists reduced the reward-enhancing effects of nicotine and were associated with decreased smoking rates in patients, which explains why patients taking potent that's right, because they give them a dopamine receptor antagonist and then often exhibit more symptoms of nicotine dependence. Okay, so Smootney et al. Examined the effects of nicotine on the connectivity within a ventral attention network. When patients performed a selective attention task, the connectivity between the ventral parietal cortex seeds and the inferior frontal gyrus decreased, and nicotine increased this connectivity. Another study found that in a mouse model, nicotine treatment increased gamma oscillations in the prefrontal cortex, which was associated with enhanced visual attention. Nicotine exposure increased visual attention accuracy in rats. So there we go, right? Increased visual attention is a benefit in a hunting situation. In a hunting and gathering situation, in a survival situation, right? Increased brain plasticity, increased memory, increased visual attention. Oh, but people that smoke are retarded. I wonder why someone's winning like every debate. Smoky man bad for real. Okay, so they're talking about how it affects the prefrontal cortex. Basically, people with schizophrenia, their prefrontal cortex is kind of messed up. That's what they're saying. Okay. Nicotine has been shown to improve attentional performance for ADHD. In a rat model, nicotine administra- administration improved working memory in the radial brachial maze, an effect associated with this and that in the ventral hippocampus and blas- basolateral amygdala. Local infusion of this and that antagonist induced working memory deficits, whereas ventral hippocampal blockade induced working memory deficits were reversed by systemic nicotine treatment. In addition, patients with ADHD appear to have a higher risk of smoking and failure to quit, perhaps because of the self medication hypothesis. Accordingly, patients' active or continued exposure to cigarettes is attributed to nicotine and tobacco products that can supplement the lack of dopamine in the corticostriatal pathway, thereby relieving symptoms. In addition, the nicotine analogs varenicline and bupropion improved ADHD-related symptoms and also supported the above hypothesis. So they're giving people nicotine patches and stimulants have been found to reduce concentration difficulties and core symptoms of ADHD. Another acute nicotine treatment in patients with ADHD revealed that these patients had improved recognition memory, increased delay tolerance, and a corresponding reduction in reaction time in a stop signal task. See, all these things important for hunting, right? A recent study pointed out that nicotine improved two pathways involving VTA. One normalized abnormal activity in animal models of ADHD, and the other induced atypical brain responses in animals with ADHD. Right? So you see again, it's regulating, right? It normalized abnormal activity. Okay, and then depression, right? Major depressive disorder and nicotine dependence are highly comorbid, and their causal link remains unclear. But it's probably similar to self medication because that is what humans basically have been using for thousands or tens of thousands of years. And we even have receptor systems for all this shit. Sorry, all this stuff. And our brain is adapted to it. And then you're just going to take it away. I'm not saying who. I'm not saying who took it away. But you're just going to take all that stuff away and then look at everybody going crazy. And then we're like, oh, we're going to sell you some pharmaceuticals here and there, right? Because you can just grow tobacco in your backyard, right? You can't make all this like high tech molecular pharmaceutical stuff. But it seems clear that all you need is like a low dose of natural tobacco every once in a while. Like it seems like the cigar smokers and the people who smoke a couple cigarettes at the bar, they pretty much got it right, according to this study. Right. A clinical and preclinical study on nicotine and depression showed that nicotine may share some of the properties of antidepressants, whereas some antidepressants are also effective smoking cessation agents. Therefore, depression and nicotine dependence may share some related neuronal substrates. In a recent study, nicotine reportedly improved neurobiological dysfunction in the corticostriatal circuit associated with depression. Specifically in patients with depression, connectivity between the nucleus accumbens and the rostral anterior cingulate cortex is reduced, whereas connectivity between the dorsal striatum and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is increased. Acute nicotine treatment normalized these pathways to the levels observed in healthy controls. So, smoking cures depression? Is that what they're saying? And since, like, basically a lot of people have whatever the chemical causes of this type of depression are, that's probably why people smoke, right? Going back, we've evolved with smoking since we've evolved with fire. And so to just take it away, it'd be like, it's basically like the same thing as taking away religion, right? It's wired into us, so you can't just take it away because people are just going to do it anyway because it's literally part of our biology to do it. And not everybody, but a certain percentage of people seem to get benefits, right? Like I said, you see some people smoking, they're winning every debate. And then it's like, you see, oh, it increases your memory, your concentration, your visual acuity, right? Makes you not depressed, balances out your all these different neural pathways and increases your brain plasticity, which helps you learn, right? Memory and brain plasticity increase with increased concentration and increased, what is it? Start, stop, task time, right? And then you got a bunch of immune diseases, right? Right. Lee's study showed that nicotine inhibited the secretion of this in that through that pathway to exert an anti-inflammatory effect. The pro-inflammatory cytokine regulates T lymphocytes to produce osteoclast factors and inflammation-induced bone marrow osteoclast differentiation. However, the chemokine regulates the rheumatoid arthritis process by recurring monocytes, as shown in Figure 10b. STAT3, specific small interfering RNA transfection, leads to significant decrease in that expression while leading to an overall anti-inflammatory degree of nicotine reduction compared with that in the control group. The higher the dose, the weaker the anti-inflammatory effect of nicotine. Therefore, the anti-inflammatory effects of nicotine require STAT3 activation. See, it's like very specific stuff, right? But people just back in the day, they just knew. They were like, okay, if we just do a little bit of this once in a while, kind of helps. And if you look at Native American like tradition, that's how it was. It's like the peace pipe, it pulled out the peace pipe of the tobacco. It wasn't an everyday thing. It wasn't like they were just puffing down on the peace pipe 24/7. It was a specific ritual at a specific time, right? Maybe they didn't know what they were doing, but they had it right. All right, we can look at some more of this, but okay. In the rat model of early OA, nicotine promoted matrix production, ameliorated cartilage destruction, decreased TNF-A levels in the serum and synovial tissue, upregulated the expression of that in the synovial tissue, showing promising therapeutic potential. In the same year, Liu et al. Conducted a more in-depth exploration and found that nicotine significantly attenuated joint degeneration and activation of chron, uh, chrondocytes in monosodium whatever treated mice, uh, all of which were reversed by this antagonist elevated whatever. So again, it depends. It really depends on your genetic structure and all that other stuff. That's too much. All right. In high-income countries, 31.5 million cases and 5.3 million deaths are reported annually. In multiple sepsis and experimental models, nicotine improved survival and attenuated multiple organ dysfunction under the different conditions. This suggests that nicotine could potentially be developed as a drug for treating sepsis. So, yeah, you can read that. I'm not going to read through all that. All right. Generally, nicotine is beneficial for treating ulcerative colitis, in particular transdermal nicotine patches or nicotine enemas, used as therapeutic agents in patients have been shown to improve colitis, histology, and global clinical scores. Among these, 6 milligrams of oral or transdermal nicotine is well tolerated and represents the highest therapeutic dose used in clinical practice with a low risk of adverse reactions in humans. All right. The choleo, colin, cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway effectively protects the myocardium from viral infections. So that might be the reason why they were saying that people that were smoking were less likely to get the C19. I'm not saying that, but I'm just looking at this research, right? When pathogens invade the body, damaged tissues produce and release inflammatory factors that act on the afferent sensory nerve and the solitary nucleus, and the afferent vagus nerve is activated to release acetylcholine. Subsequently, acetylcholine binds to that and on the surface of inflammatory cells, inhibits the synthesis and release of pro-inflammatory factors, reduces inflammatory responses, and prevents tissue damage and death. Right. It goes deep into this. I mean, I read through it, but it's kind of hard to like. Basically, it stops inflammation, and see how it's like very specific nerves and cell, like parts of the cell, and these different like neural pathways and stuff like that. So kind of fun to sit here reading all that. Okay. The effects of nicotine associated with different diseases demonstrate its double-edged characteristics, which may be influenced by diverse factors, including pathophysiological mechanisms, tissue and cell responses, treatment duration, and dosage. Research indicates that the impact of nicotine on animals and humans is primarily mediated by this. However, it is crucial to recognize that many studies have been limited to the cellular level, potentially differing from the overall effects in the body. Further research, including clinical studies, is necessary to fully understand the therapeutic potentials of nicotine in various diseases. In addition, when considering the clinical use of nicotine, safety concerns associated with its complex pharmacological effects, addictive nature, and human tolerance must be considered carefully. Okay. Choosing an appropriate method for administration. Designing precisely targeted drugs for different diseases. In conclusion, nicotine is widely recognized for its harmful effects. However, recent research has shed light on its potential therapeutic benefits in certain diseases. Consequently, it is essential to approach nicotine with caution and conduct comprehensive research to fully understand its effects and ensure its safe and effective clinical use. A deeper understanding of the mechanisms of action of nicotine in different diseases and the development of targeted drug delivery systems can pave the way for its use as a medicinal agent. All right. So that's basically that. So, yeah, you can see that there's something to the whole stoned ape theory as well as the fact that nicotine does have some therapeutic, beneficial, what do you call it, effects. And so people that don't smoke, that think that smokers are crazy or whatever, you can see that it's obviously not true and that they are actually basically increasing their intelligence and focus and all these other beneficial things for your brain. And yeah, it has some negative effects if you do too much of it, and specifically smoking. It seemed like smoking plus nicotine is like, while it's the most flavorful delivery system, might not be the best. Okay, so where do we leave this off? Oh yeah, okay. Gotta respond to that, right? People saying that, oh, if it wasn't for black people, we'd be in space by now. But if it wasn't for the Christians and your crazy ethical laws, we could have just genetically modified all the black people to be like Will Smith, and then we'd have a real return to Fresh Prince. Okay, that's about it for this video. Thanks for watching if you did. Have a good day and peace.